Hey, William Gilmore here for the ScreenwritersJourney.com. It is day 278 of the journey. And we've got good news, bad news. But the bad news comes with a bit of honey. I'll start with the good news. I submitted to WeScreenplay.com. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. If it's We Screenplay or if it's WE Screenplay. It could be the initials of the company or a person's name. I'm sure if I'm pronouncing it wrong, they will let me know. But for right now, we're going to go with WeScreenplay.com. They're a script coverage service, and they offer several different packages for script notes on your screenplay. They have a similar pricing program to screenplay readers, which I had submitted to a while back. And WeScreenplay is making an offer that they will give you a first impression for free on the first page of your screenplay. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. It's only the first page. But you have to keep in mind that readers sometimes will only make it through the first 10 pages of your screenplay before setting it down and moving on to the next one in the slush pile. Because if you haven't hooked them in that first 10 pages, they're probably not going to get hooked for the rest of the story. So you've got to hook them in that first 10 pages, and you make that first impression on those first 10 pages, of course, on page number 1. So We Screenplay has offered this first impression service for free, where you send in the first page of your screenplay, and they'll give you sort of what their general first impression is, and whether or not they want to keep reading. Of course, it's a great marketing ploy from We Screenplay because they're trying to get you to buy one of their coverage packages. So there's something in it for them too, but you do get something out of it. So I submitted. Now, you're only supposed to submit one first page. That's all you're allowed, and you have to input your email address. And once they have that email address, it's blocked from using that first impression service down the road. But if you have multiple email addresses, as I do, you can manipulate the system a little bit and get by with getting more than one set of notes. So that's what I did, just to check it out and let you know how it worked. And I have to say, not a bad little thing they got going there. They obviously have to take time to read it, and I'm sure they get tons of submissions, all in hopes that they're going to get you to buy a screenplay package, a coverage note package down the road. But they have to spend the time to read all those. They got to write down their notes and send them off to you. Now, these notes aren't extensive. It's only one page, so there's not a whole lot they can get into. But I did send in the calling and come-ups. And the first one I got back was the calling. They do this in about 5 days, by the way. So you get a response in 5 days. The first one was the calling, and my reader thought the descriptions were a bit dense. And I have to say, on that first page, they are. It's a horror screenplay, so this is the cold open, and we kind of establish the mood and the genre and what the story is and where it's going to go. So this is my cold open actually shows the waterfall and shows the baptism where Eben Myers drowns his granddaughter in the pond below the waterfall during a baptism gone bad, and that's sort of what sets up the haunting of the waterfall. And we don't really get that in the rest of the story. Connor goes to the waterfalls, but he's not exactly sure what the issue is with them. The local townsfolk don't want to really talk about the waterfall, so we have to establish very early on that the waterfalls are bad. There's bad juju there. Nobody wants to go there. And so that has to happen in the cold open. So I took a little more time and gave a little more description here in this particular opening to sort of establish the mood and the feel and to really play up the waterfall that this is a bad place. Once we get past that cold open, the direction and the action becomes a little more spare. So I'm okay with it being a little dense here on that first page. There's not a whole lot of dialogue, so we really have to establish, the myth of the waterfall with the people gathered around and watching this baptism that goes horribly, horribly wrong. With that in mind, that the description was a little bit dense, the reader went on to say the setup was very intriguing and complex, with a very interesting focal point, referring to both the waterfall and the fact that we're setting up this sort of religious atmosphere, uber religious, with this sort of backcountry folk really getting into the extreme baptisms, and which results in the death of the young girl. So that was good, and concluded with he was definitely interested to keep reading. So all good points on that opening scene. A little dense, but okay, because it painted as he said, it painted a beautiful world and really set up the dynamic of what was going to come down the road. So a little dense, but painted a great world. Intriguing and complex, had an interesting focal point, and he was definitely interested to keep reading. So those are all good, great first impressions on The Calling. And so that would keep him going through, hopefully, the 10 pages. And if he gets through the 10 pages, then the rest of the script is pretty well set to be read. If you've got him in the first 10, there's a very good chance they're going to make it through the rest of your screenplay. So the second page that I sent in was the first page of come-ups. And that critique came back, and he said, this is an excellent first page. I'm going to have to read this because it's a whole quote. This is an excellent first page. Even the last line of dialogue makes us wish the writer included the second page. You don't get much better than that. I think I'm going to use that in my marketing materials when I send it out. Yeah, probably not. It's hard to send out a critique of your first page. But that's a pretty good statement. This is an excellent first page. Even the last line of dialogue makes us wish the writer included the second page. The dialogue was crisp and realistic while setting up the story and the characters. You know, you can't get any better first impression than that. So that definitely has the reader intrigued and wanting to read more. So great first impressions on both, with come-ups really getting a stellar first impression. Now, just because you have a stellar first impression on that first page doesn't mean that the rest of your screenplay, the 119 pages that follow, are going to have the same impression. You could lose it in the second act. You could lose it in the third act, which I will bring up here in just a moment. Or you may not have a good turning point at the end of the first act, and that could lose the reader. But if you've got him in that first part, in those first 10 pages, you've got a good chance of keeping them going. So that's a pretty good little service from WeScreenplay.com, and I think I may go ahead and check out their service. So it's done what it wanted it to do for them. I got a little something out of it. They're probably going to get something out of it. I'll probably I won't send in either come-ups or The Calling, since I've already done a lot of that work with those screenplays, and I'm feeling pretty confident where they are. Sort of confident. Again, that's coming up here in a second, the bad news. But I will probably, when I finish my revisions on The Devil's Tramping Ground, I'll probably send a copy to WeScreenplay, and I may send it also to Screenplay Readers, which I've used in the past, and we can do a side-by-side comparison of the two services and see what they both offer and how they react, how two different services react to the same script. It's sort of an apples and oranges thing, because sometimes it's just two different readers can have different reactions. It's not necessarily the screenplay service, but we'll get a feel for it. We'll see how that happens. That'll probably come up in a couple of weeks. But then that brings us to our bad news of the day. I got my first rejection on The Calling from Mark Castaldo of Destiny Films. He's one of the director-producers who attended the Great American Pitch Fest 2 weeks ago that I went to. He requested a copy of The Calling, and I sent it in. I am pleased that he was able to get back to me so quickly, but sort of disappointed that he decided to pass on the screenplay. But there's a caveat with this. It wasn't just a complete horrible rejection, like, the screenplay's terrible. He said he found the script enjoyable for the most part. Okay. He particularly liked the first and second acts, and that's key to note, because, of course, we just got to our review from WeScreenplay saying, that first page made a great first impression. Obviously, it had an impression on Mr. Castaldo as he made it past the first page and through the first 10 pages, and wanted to keep reading. And he liked the first act. He even liked the second act. And a lot of times, screenplays get lost in the second act. You always hear, the story got lost in the second act. And that's because things really kind of slow down, and just other things are coming into play, and the story can kind of lose focus in the the second act. So the fact that I was able to keep his interest through the second act means I've done a good job there as well. So a good first act, a good second act, and then we hit the third act. And that's kind of where, I guess, for Mr. Castaldo anyway, the screenplay fell apart. He said it was a bit muddy and became too wild and out there. Now, I'm not sure what to make of that comment. Again, it's not coverage notes. He's not going into detail. He's just kind of giving a sort of a feel for it. So my best guess, and that's all I can do is guess from that, too wild and out there and a bit muddy. I'm thinking he probably did not buy into the third act twist that I have, where the thug from the first act is reintroduced and becomes a major character involving the waterfall. And I've often kind of wondered to myself in the past, does the screenplay become a little too actiony for horror in this third act? Of course, you want a lot of action, but you want scary action. You want horror action happening. And this becomes a little actiony, if that's a word. With kidnapping and gunplay and things like that, that maybe steps out of the horror genre a little bit. And so that may be where the muddy part is coming from. I haven't had an issue with that on other readers or coverage notes that I've received on it. No one has brought that up, so I've never thought it was an issue. I've kind of wondered that just myself. I'm like, when you start bringing out the guns and having two people fight each other, it's not really ghosty scary, even though technically the two guys fighting are ghosts. They just don't realize it. So it may be one of those things that's a little too different for the genre. We all want fresh, we want original, we want new, we want different, but not too original, not too fresh, not too different. So I may have gone a little too far on that. So again, it's the first time that I've heard that from someone, so I'm not going to jump in and make changes at this point. I want to wait and see if I get any more feedback that indicates that same kind of thing. And it may just be that, it just didn't suit Mr. Castaldo. The next reader may think that's great and may like that. You can't please everybody all the time. And so this may be one of those cases where it just didn't work for him, but it'll work for the majority of everybody else. Or it may not work for the majority of people and may only work for the few people that I've given it to so far. So I'm just going to have to wait and see what other feedback I get on that. But so yes, it's sad that I got the rejection, but there were some good comments in the first and second acts. Seemed to really work for him. So cross our fingers and see what happens with the next one. Anyway, if you want information on We Screenplay's first impression coverage, you can find a link down below in the blog. And I do have to make the announcement that neither myself nor this website, thescreenwritersjourney.com, are affiliated with We Screenplay or Screenplay readers, and we do not receive any type of financial compensation from them for mentioning them here on the blog. Just so you know that it's all on the up and up, and this is part of the journey. I'm figuring this stuff out along with you. So once I send Devil's Tramping Ground in for coverage, I'll let you know how that turns out and keep you posted on those notes. But until then, please keep up the writing and let me know how your own writing is going. You can reach me through the contact page or email me at william@thescreenwritersjourney.com. Until next time, I'm William Gilmore, and this is thescreenwritersjourney.com.